First of all, my name is Ted Meyer. I'm a financial advisor. I'm an insurance agent. I have my securities license. I work with attorneys and accountants and all that stuff. And so it's a natural fit for us to talk about estate planning because we talk about that with our clients all the time. But today is not about Coventry. It's about SOFA. So we're not going to really talk too much about specific products. It's going to be at a higher level, more basically the topic of estate planning, what it's all about, what you should be looking out for. What are some of the pitfalls that are out there? What are the differences on some of the things? So let me just start off today with a really pretty simple question. All right. And the question is, what is estate planning? What do you guys think? What is estate planning? Anybody?
Well, it's understanding your net worth and your assets and what goes into them first of all, and then from there we're planning where they're going to go in the future, maybe?
I think you're the first person, I've been doing this for almost 15 years, that has summarized it very clearly. Because most of the times I get the answer, estate planning is I'm going to get a will or I'm going to get a trust. Or someone says estate planning is I've got to make sure I don't run out of money. But nobody ever really says it's both pieces. And it is both pieces. So one, it's the management of your assets. Management of assets. And if you guys want to take notes and all that stuff, no problem. While you're alive, because I'm now retired, I've said goodbye to a paycheck most likely. I've got my assets, my 401k, my brokerage account. I might have some real estate. I've got to find a way to live on that stuff. I've got to make sure that the standard of living I've grown accustomed to doesn't change in retirement. Okay? And then part two, it's the process of distribution. Distribution one to you, how do I take constructive receipt of my assets? There's ways to get things on long-term capital gains, ordinary income tax, short-term, tax-free, tax-deferred, all that stuff. So how do I take constructive receipt of that? And then at the end of the day, when I'm no longer here, how do I make sure these assets go to whoever I want, whenever I want, and as soon as possible? And that, in a nutshell, is really what estate planning is all about. And so there's a couple other seminars that go on here that talk specifically about wills and trusts, and they're just going to compare those two. Today is a little bit more general. It's going to literally talk about estate planning. So we're going to talk about both sides of the spectrum, all right? And so as we go through this stuff, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to shout them out, ask any questions on all of this stuff. All right. So we're going to take this and we're going to break it down into two sides of the coin, basically. And the first side of it is going to be issues I'll face while I'm alive. We call them living issues. And the first living issue we always start off with is something called guardianship and conservatorship. Guardianship is the management of another person. So, for example, I've got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old at home, boy and a girl. And every time they want to go somewhere on a field trip with school, what do they bring home? Permission slip. And the permission slip says your guardian, your mom and dad, have to sign off on this so we can take you on the trip. So the guardianship is really the management of another person's well-being. Okay? The conservatorship side of it is more the management of somebody from a financial side of it. And these are very important things to have in today's world, to be honest with you. I'll hear stories of folks, let me stop right there and just say one quick thing, a caveat. We're going to be talking about some legal issues today. I am not an attorney. I am not a paralegal. I am a financial advisor. So this is in no way construed as legal advice, but this is going to be, in general, talking about a lot of legal issues. So we're going to talk in very high-level general terms on this stuff, but it's important for you guys to understand this. So guardianship and conservatorship is the management of another person. And like I said, with my kids, when they want to go somewhere, they've got to get a permission slip signed by me or the mom and says, hey, they can go places. Conservatorship is the management of the financial well-being. These are actual businesses here in town, and you see them every once in a while. Does anyone in this room know anybody who has had to apply for someone to be their guardian or their conservator? And it was not good. Okay. That's typically what I hear. Guardianship and conservatorship, if you need to have someone take care of you, who typically do you want to do that? Your spouse, your kids, your siblings, somebody you know. But every once in a while you hear a story of someone who didn't have anybody, or they didn't take care of the appropriate documents ahead of time, and then somebody had to apply, or I should say, they had to ask somebody to be their guardian and conservator. And there are businesses here in town that's all they do. That's all they do. They're fiduciaries, and for a nominal fee, they'll provide this business for you. Now, how many of you out there think that's a good idea to have some business make healthcare decisions for you and financial decisions for you? I don't know too many people that want to go that route, and it's unfortunate when it does. Because typically that's what I'll hear the stories of, it's not good. It's not happening the way they want. So this really happens in our neck of the woods when somebody falls ill. They become mentally challenged, they have Alzheimer's, they have dementia, they get in a car accident, and somebody has to make a decision for this person who's not able to now. They're incompetent, they're unconscious, and they look for powers of attorney. How many people in this room have powers of attorney set up right now that says if something was to happen to me, this person takes care of me. If they can't do it, this person. If they can't do it, this person. Quick show of hands. How many people have it? 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 people in the room have it. 6. Okay. This is what we're talking about right here. Nobody I know wants somebody that they don't know to make these decisions for them. They typically know someone. My brother will do it. My sister will do it. My spouse will do it. My neighbor who I've known for 20 years will do it. They just don't want some random stranger to make those decisions for them, and that's what's happening now. Okay? So the way you get around these is you will get powers of attorney. Okay? In Arizona, there are 3 distinct powers of attorney. Some states only have 2. Most states only have 2. In Arizona, there's 3 distinct ones. One is a financial power of attorney. Financial. One is a healthcare power of attorney. And the other one is mental health care. Okay? A lot of states still today, this mental health care that started in Arizona, I think it was about 2008, 2009 when that came around. Most states will have a paragraph inside of their healthcare power of attorney that just talks about if I am mentally incompetent, here's what I want to have happen. Arizona, being a place where a lot of retirees, seniors come to live, took it upon themselves to say, no, we should have a standalone mental health care power of attorney that gets a little more in depth about facilities and care centers and things like that. So Arizona has 3 very distinct: financial power of attorney, health care, and mental health care, and they do exactly that. My financial power of attorney makes all financial decisions for me. I give them the power to make the decisions for me as if I was competent and acting for myself. Pay the bill, pay the hospital bill, make sure the mortgage is taken care of, pay the utilities, things like that, because I could be in a situation where I can't do that for a while. Healthcare. Something happens, I have a medical event, I have an accident, I'm now unconscious and somebody needs to make decisions. The number one cost typically for a lot of physicians and doctors out there is malpractice insurance. That is a huge cost to their practice. They do not want to be sued. So when it comes time to making these decisions, they would love somebody else to make those decisions for them so that they don't have to do it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that down here in a minute. So they want someone to make those healthcare decisions. And after all, who do you want to make your healthcare decisions for you? Your spouse, your friends, your family, people you know. And then the same thing with the mental health care one. This is brand new, Alzheimer's and dementia. As a society, we are living longer, aren't we? Yeah. Once we're a married couple and we get to be 65, it's something like a 50 or 60% chance that one of us lives to be, I think, 93 now. Well, we are living longer, but are we living longer better? Sometimes. And sometimes we're just living longer in pain and suffering, things like that. Medicine's getting better and better, but it might not be ideal. So we want to make sure that we have these things set up. So the powers of attorney will help you overcome any conservator and guardianship issues. Some of the questions we get on this is, I've just moved here from Washington or I've moved here from Nebraska. Will those work? Yeah, I mean, typically those things work from state to state, but it's a good idea to have those reviewed by an attorney every 3, 4, 5 years, whenever things change. I can't tell you how many times we've sat down with folks and I'll ask them, who is your power of attorney? And they'll say, well, it's going to be this person. And we read the document and it's actually somebody else. It wasn't the spouse. Maybe it's a new marriage. It was one of the kids who maybe now the kids are having some challenges of their own. They're not paying their taxes. They might be dependent on alcohol or drugs. And they're like, yeah, I think I need to change that stuff. So like all of this stuff, every several years, it's a really good idea to sit down and spend an hour reviewing all of this stuff, making sure that your wishes today are still the same wishes you had when you set that up a while ago. Okay? There's one more piece that goes along with these powers of attorney, and it is called a living will. Okay? Anybody tell me what a living will is?
It's a will when you're still alive. That makes sense, doesn't it?
That's awesome. I wish I had something to give you. That's a great answer. It is a will for when you're still alive, but the condition in which you're alive is I'm incompetent, I'm unconscious, I'm on life support, things like that. So that's where the living will comes into play. It's what are my decisions in the event I find myself, typically it's on life support. Do I want drastic measures taken to keep me alive? Do I want certain blood transfusions? Do I want you just to let me go, give me pain medication, give me water, fluids, whatever, just let me go? You saw this in the news several years ago. There was a woman down in Florida named Terry Schiavo. I don't know if you guys remember it, but she was a young lady when something had happened to her, and I'm not quite sure what happened, but she found herself on life support. And the husband wanted to turn off the machine and get on with his life and said, let's go. The doctors had said, there's no hope, this is over. You know, there was quite a bit of time had gone by. Well, the parents wanted to do what? They were keeping her alive. We're keeping her alive. And so when she didn't have a living will set up, and the doctors had, the husband wanted to do one thing, and the parents wanted to do another thing, what did the doctors do? Nothing. They kept her alive. They didn't make a decision either way, because if they made your decision, you'll sue me. If I made your decision, you'll sue me. So they basically kept her alive. And I think she was on there quite a while. I mean, long time. And then she finally did pass away. But it all could have been taken care of with a living will. And so depending on what you want or what you don't want, or even in some cases what your religion allows you to do, it makes a lot of sense to take care of these things up front and say, in the event something happens, this is what I want. Okay? And so these 4 documents all together kind of encompass what's included in a power of attorney. Whenever you talk to most attorneys in this town, that's what they'll put together for you and say, here's what it is. This will help you on some of these issues. And they'll make sure that if something happens to you, at least you've named somebody that you want to take care of you instead of finding yourself in a guardianship and a conservatorship issue. Okay? Most attorneys in this town will probably charge you somewhere around $500 to $700 to do something like this. Okay? The way I look at legal documents, again, not as an attorney, is if it's a legal document and there's a chance it may end up in court one day, I would prefer that an attorney drew it up, because then I know that the attorney will most likely stand behind it. Okay? When you go to legal doc preparers, when you go to Office Max and you get them for $29.95 and you fill them out, those should work, but if I'm going to do legal documents, I'm going to call in the legal profession to help me out. Okay? So just a little caveat on that. We will continue moving on with a few more living issues. Let's talk about financial issues on the living side. Okay? This is a big one that has started to come up here, and it's getting more and more attention all the time, which is good. When your parents or your grandparents retired, about how long did their retirement last before they passed away? 20, 25 years? That's a long time. About 10 years. I know, for example, like my grandparents retired at 65 and they had both passed away by 73. And so retirement income, retirement planning wasn't a big deal all those years ago because we typically had a job we had for 30 or 40 years at the same company. We got a nice pension from that. Then we had a Social Security payment that was coming in. And then we had some money in a retirement account. And so that retirement account, that pension, and Social Security made up the three legs of our retirement. And we had enough money to last us for the 7, 10, 15 years. But now, with the statistics I just gave you, retirement is no longer a 5 to 10 year deal. It's typically a 25 to 30 to 35 year deal. How many people in the room know somebody who's alive and they're over 93? Hands up. Everyone in this room knows somebody who's 93. I know you do. We all do. I've got 3 or 4 family members that are in their late 90s. Okay? So I want you to think about that because they retired when they were in their mid 60s and now they're in their mid 90s. That is 30 years. I get folks all the time telling me that it's not going to be me, I promise you. Well, statistically, it is going to be you. One of you is going to get there. Again, when we have a married couple that is 65 and they're together, there's like a 60, 70% chance one of you is going to get to 93. Okay? And so we have to now plan for 25, 30 years in retirement. We don't want to plan on 10 years of retirement and then get to our 75th birthday and run out of money, do we? No. So we're not going to get into any financial products or anything like that. I'm just going to make sure you guys look at your retirement in a way that I think makes a lot of sense. After all, retirement income and retirement money, it's all a math problem. Let me say that again. Retirement is a math problem. It is not the way you feel about your money. It's what your money is actually going to do. So I always have our clients do this when they first come to us. Retirement should look like this. I've got my income, and what kind of guaranteed sources of income do we have in retirement?
Social Security.
Social Security, pension. Okay, if you have an annuity, yes, that could be a guaranteed source of income. Anyone else have anything else that's a guaranteed source? Okay. 401k, I'm glad you brought that up. That is not a guaranteed source of income. It is a payment that you have to take out on a guaranteed basis once you hit 70 and a half, but that account can run out. IRA, same thing as a 401k. That account can run out. So just because you have that, I always take that over, I put that over here, okay, in your assets. And so we have IRA, we have your brokerage account, we may have real estate. What else is out there, guys? Bank accounts, checking, savings, things like that. REITs, stocks, bonds, all that stuff's over there. So we've got our income. And the average Social Security payment is? Anyone know? It's about $1,300. It's about $1,300. So we've got $1,300 on him, and we've got about another $700 on her. So that's $2,000. Pension. How many people in this room have a pension? Congratulations. Not many new pensions have been created. So if you have a pension today, congratulations on that. I'm just going to say, let's throw out another $1,000 on a pension. When you have that pension, make sure that that pension is guaranteed for you and your spouse. We'll talk about Social Security in a second on how that works. And then an annuity, let's just say I've got another $500 a month coming in on an annuity. Okay? Over here, I've got my expenses. Okay? So I add all this up. I got 13, that's 2,000, that's 3,000, that's 3,500. That's what I have coming in every single month guaranteed. That doesn't include my RMD, my IRAs, my brokerage account withdrawals, none of that. This is just the stuff I have coming in that's guaranteed. Over here, I've got expenses. And let's just say I've got expenses of, now expenses, I'm talking about required expenses, like mortgage and utilities and groceries, and then things like discretionary expenses, like I'm going to go see the kids, I'm going to a movie, or going to spring training, all that stuff. I'm sorry? Gas. Let's just say that's around $5,500. when I add that up every single month. The easiest way to come up with your expenses, because nobody I know loves doing a budget, so don't do it. But take your bank statement, where your checking account is. Because most of your paychecks go into your checking account, and most of your bills come out of your checking account.
Yes.
So just go in there and look at the very first page where it says debits and credits, and go to debits and withdrawals over the last 6 months and add them all up. And then divide that by 6. And that's what you've been spending the last 6 months on average. Now, if it's way out of whack because I had to buy an air conditioner, I just bought a car, we just took a cruise, okay, well, those are the exceptions, take those out. But find out what your expenses. How many people in here know within a couple $100 what your monthly expenses truly are? Awesome. That is very important to understand. But let's look at this scenario. So I've got income of $3,500, I've got expenses of $2,500, so what am I short? $2,000 a month. So where do I go get that $2,000 from? I go here, don't I? How many of you know, since you have this number, most of you, and most of you already know this number, whatever yours is, if I was to ask a question, how many of you know how long this will last? If you're taking out this amount of money every single month, how many of you in here have sat down and said, I'm going to run out of money when I am? You got it? Good? You got your number? Does it take you all the way to 100?
Not quite 100.
Okay. We want to get these to 100. In the security side, we used to do illustrations for folks, and we used to show an 8% rate of return. And if you get 8% rate of return, this is great. You know what that rate of return is down to today? About 3. Saying 3%. You got 100 grand to have $3,000. So what you want to find out is, let's just say I've got 500 grand in here. I need $2,000 a month. How many months can I do that for? I can do that for 250 months, right? 250 times 2 is 500. Well, there's 12 months in a year. How many years is this going to last me? 20-something, like 21 years and change. And I am 66 years old today. Okay, I got some things to consider. I got some things to take a look at. The whole idea in retirement is I don't want to run out of money. Nobody wants to. And let me tell you really quickly our thoughts on retirement. Retirement is not about your assets. It's not. It has nothing to do with how big this number is, does it? It has to do with how big, this number is. Because if I was to ask you right now, would you want $8,000 a month or $1 million? Which one would you take? $8,000 a month for life or $1 million? Who's going to take the 8,000? Who's going to take the $1 million? You take the $1 million. Take the $1 million, you'll take the $1 million.
Yeah, I'm a little older.
Okay. I'm a little older. I have less time. Most people I know will say, give me that $8 grand a month. Why? Because I like the guarantee. I want the income. I want the income coming every single month. When you were working, what did you get every other Friday? A paycheck. When you retired, what did you say goodbye to? And when you were working, you were saving money. You were putting money in your brokerage accounts and your IRAs and all that stuff. And when you retired, did you start going in there the next month and say, okay, now I'm going to start taking money out? Or did you sit there and go, no, I'm programmed to just put money into it. I don't want to take any money out of it. And so you just have to look at this stuff on the financial side, because the number one concern, aside from some of this legal stuff we talk about, is people come to us and say, I don't want to run out of money. You know, the Social Security down here, let's look at that scenario real quick. So you guys got this idea here. Find out what your number is. How long is my money going to last? Now, granted, I did all of this at 0 interest. So if you say, hey, I'm making 5% on this, okay, well then we can factor that in. Oh, hey, down here on my pension or my annuity, I've got a cost of living adjustment on there, so it goes up every month. Okay, well that's great. All I'm telling you is you better know what your numbers are, because you got things like inflation on this guy right here. So your expenses are going up by about 2 or 3% a year. Are we getting 2 or 3% a year on our Social Security payments? No, we're not. 3 of the last 6 years, we got what? Zippo. Are we typically getting a cost of living adjustment on pension accounts? Those are level. So if I'm here today, I'm $3,500 in, and that's $5,500. Well, that $3,500 is not going up. But that $5,500 is going up. And the longer I live, the longer that has time to run up. So I want you to think about that stuff. And here's the other thing I want you to think about on the income side of it. Social Security. All right. Her Social Security payment is $700. His Social Security payment is $1,200. Combined, that's $1,900 a month. What happens when she dies? What does he keep? So if she passes away, how much does he get?
$1,200.
He gets $1,200. Perfect. Thank you. He gets to keep his $1,200. What did he just take? He just took a $700 a month pay cut. He gets her $1,200, but he just lost $700 a month. Okay? Now, let's flip that around. He dies. What does she get? She gets his. She gets the larger of the two. So she gets $1,200. It's actually two checks. She gets her $700, and then she gets another $500 that comes in the, I can't remember what they call it, but it's like a survivor's benefit. So she'll get the $1,200. But again, what did she just take? She did not get a raise. She got a cut. Because combined they had $1,900. Now she's down to $1,200. That's a really bad 12. Sorry about that. So she just lost $700 a month, or $8,400 a year. Okay? She just lost $8,400 with the potential for 2 or 3% a year of COLAs. We're not getting them every year because the government's just not giving them to us. So it's really important to understand how that works. How many of you have turned on Social Security? There are seminar after seminar after seminar out there about maxing your Social Security. You want the secret on how to max it? Just wait. It's not a secret. It's not a seminar. But that's not what's right for everybody. Because what's right for everybody is how much do I need and when do I need it? What are the health concerns I have to be worried about? Nobody in my family lives to be 80. Nobody, and I've got a heart condition, so I'm not going to live that long. So do I want to wait and maximize it? Maybe. But these Social Security seminars out there, they say, I'll show you how to maximize Social Security. The answer is both wait till 70. Have a nice day. Okay? But you need to consider things like Social Security. When you turn Social Security on early, you just permanently reduced your payment, and you permanently reduced your survivor's benefit to your spouse. And most advisors I know don't tackle that problem. They just go, just turn it on when you get to 62 and let's move on. That's typically not the right answer. Okay? So if you want help with Social Security, get with someone who's specialized in Social Security and understand why that's an important piece. Okay? And then the last piece I'm going to talk to you about on the financial side, and then we'll move on. There's two pieces I'm going to talk about. If I've got $500,000 in my account, and I need to get more money out of there, or it needs to make more money, I'm going to need more money in retirement because I've already shown through this little scenario we did that I'm going to run out when I'm 86. What are my two choices to make this last longer? What can I do? I can spend less, thank you. I can reduce my expenses. That was that number down here. Or I can increase my return. Right? Because I don't think going back to work is an option, is it? That's not why we retired. So how do we reduce expenses? Just from a generic standpoint, how many of you in here own mutual funds and all of your stuff? Okay. Mutual funds are incredibly expensive. Google, there's a Forbes article out there that talks about the average cost of a mutual fund is north of 3.5%. All in. The stuff that they don't talk to you about. Advisors don't talk to you about that. I'm an advisor. I know this stuff because I've looked at that number and said, why is the fund telling me it's getting 8 and my statement shows I'm getting 5.32? Why is that number coming in there? Because there's all kinds of fees. There's fund fees, there's marketing fees, 12B1 fees, there's cash drag in there, there's all kinds of stuff. Mutual funds are an incredibly expensive way to buy the market. ETFs are an incredibly inexpensive way to buy it. So you can exchange your mutual funds for ETFs and probably save you somewhere in the neighborhood of 2% a year, maybe a little more. Well, what's 2% on 500 grand over 30 years? That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So look at the way you're invested. When you reduce expenses, that's one of them right there. The other one is increased return. Increased return, I've got to take more risk. That's not the one most people in retirement want to take. Most of my clients are coming to me saying, bet the farm, I need more money. Let's go. Let's start buying individual stocks and buying and trading this stuff. Okay? So you need to look at this, how it's invested, because the goal is, it is your money. It's not your advisor's money. It is your money. You should be having these conversations. How do I get more return out of this? How do I reduce my expense? Most people we sit with have no idea the funds that they own, why they own them, or what they're paying. I can't tell you how many folks I sit down with, they give me a brokerage statement, they go, can you read it? I'm like, well, I can read it, but it's not my money. Can you read it for me? And they go, nope. All I do is I kind of open it up and I look at the number on the first page. And if it's a good number, we go out and have dinner. If it's a bad number, I put it over here, I file it in that drawer. And every 6 months, I pull them all out and put them in a binder and I move on and I don't ask any questions. It is your money. Please check with your advisor and make sure that understanding this takes the biggest risk in retirement, which is running out of money, off the table. Okay? 401k is in here too. If you have a 401k, you were working for a company and they were advising you on that, and you had you had choices inside of there. 401ks are incredibly expensive. If you've retired, the best thing, the optimal thing to do is take that 401k, roll it into your own IRA, and then you have tens of thousands of choices to invest it in. When you work for a company, they probably just give you a menu of 10, 15, 20, maybe up to 100 different funds. Here, pick what you want. And what you do is you look at last year's performance. I like that. That looks good. Pick one or two and you throw it in there, maybe 5. So that's called chasing returns. Those did really well last year. I'm buying those. Okay. If you roll into your own IRA, you can open an account at a Fidelity or a Schwab or Vanguard, wherever you want. All of a sudden, you've got every imaginable fund available to you, and you can say, let's do this, let's do that, let's buy that. Okay? So if you're not working for the company anymore, you left for a reason. It might be a good idea to have your money leave too. Okay? Any questions on that? Last piece on income, and then we're going back to legal stuff. I've got about 5 more minutes on this. Let's talk about taxes. There are 4 places known to man where I can get tax-free income. And the reason I bring up tax-free income is because we all have taxable income. We all have IRAs or 401ks, so that's 100% taxable. I have my Social Security payment that comes in, that's taxable. I have a pension check that comes in if I'm fortunate, that's taxable. So I sit down with too many folks in retirement that just have a huge IRA account, and they're excited it's in there. But every time they want to touch that, guess what happens? Tax, 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 tax. So just for your general information, where are the 4 places that when I've put money, I can pull them out tax-free? Perfect. Roth IRA is one of them. I put money into a Roth IRA, I pull it out, it's free. I paid the tax on it already. Where else can I get tax-free income? How about muni bonds? You guys hear about muni bonds all the time. My guy wants me to buy muni bonds, muni bonds. Yes, they are tax-free, but the income, the interest from that goes on my federal taxes, and it does increase my provisional taxes, so it's not 100% tax-free. Yes, sir? Okay, very good. So it's kind of a half, because it's kind of tax-free, but it's kind of not. Anywhere else?
Insurance?
Cash value insurance. Cash value life insurance. I've got a life insurance policy, and there's $50,000 of cash in there. Well, depending on the cost basis, that might be $50,000 of free cash for you to take out. Last place? Home equity. Why do I bring up home equity? I bring up home equity because of this. How many of you out there have a long-term care insurance plan? Just so you know, I sit down with folks all the time that are now in their 80s coming to me and saying the premium has gone up again and again, and now it's unaffordable. I don't want it anymore. I always look at your home as your long-term care insurance plan. Not your policy, but your plan. See, if I need long-term care, I need to have a bucket of money I can go get, but I'm not sure I want to buy a policy to cover that. Because even though the statistics say that 50% of us over the age of 70 are going to be in a long-term care facility and all that good stuff, how many of your friends truly are sitting in long-term care facilities? Not as many as the ads or the statistics would have you believe. And if you go sit with somebody who sells long-term care insurance to talk to them about long-term care insurance, what are you going to get? Long-term care insurance. That's what you're going to get. If you go to Jiffy Lube on the corner, what are you getting when you go to Jiffy Lube? You get an oil change. You might get some other stuff, but you get an oil change because that's what they sell. When you go to talk to a long-term care person about long-term care, they're going to sell you a long-term care policy. I'm just telling you from where I sit. The reason I understand this or I know this is I have a lot of clients that I've picked up that I have a doctor right now. The premiums were $2,200 for him and his wife. They just hit 80. It's now $7,800 a month, $7,800 a year. Premiums going up. And they don't think they're going to use it for a long time. And all of a sudden they're like, I got to pay this every year. And every year it starts creeping up. I can count, I've been in the business 16 years. I can count on one hand the number of clients that bought a long-term policy where at the end of the day, we looked at it and said, it worked. You used it, you passed away, and it paid some bills. The rest of the time, I get the, I don't want this. I'm paying too much. I got other things I want to do with that money. So I bring this up because when we talk about living issues and making sure you don't live your money, long-term care insurance premiums are a big deal. You want to have a plan that if I need long-term care, where could I go access the money? Your home equity is a great place. If I got a house free and clear, or even a second house free and clear, and I need long-term care, I'm probably not going on those vacations anymore to my summer home. I will use the equity from that house to pay for it. Just a thought. All right? Any other questions on living issues, financial issues, powers of attorney, any of that stuff? And again, today, really, guys, it's just about getting you to think a little bit differently than the way you've been thinking before. And I don't know too many advisors that look at it this way. Okay? As an advisor, my stuff's at Schwab. All my client stuff is at Schwab. If I'm a Schwab advisor, I only talk to you about that Schwab account. I don't care about home equity, long-term care, powers of attorney. I'm not talking to you about tax-free distributions or income. I'm typically not. I'm trying to gather as many assets as I can. If you go talk to an attorney about an estate plan, they're going to talk to you about a will or a trust. They're not going to talk to you about your finances. They're not going to talk to you about how to make sure you don't outlive your money. So it's important that when you entered perhaps the biggest phase of your life, retirement, the most critical with your money, that you have advice that's specific to you. You know, we talked about, do you guys want a lump sum or that income coming in? There's those commercials out there. ING used to do it. I think it's Voya now, where they'd sit on a bench and they'd ask them, what's your number? How much money do you have? 850,000, $1.2 million, $1.3 million. At the end of the day, you can lose that money, correct? But you can't lose that income you turn on. So to me, retirement is all about it. Guaranteed income stream that comes in. And the reason I know this is because when I look at my client base, my happiest clients are those people that have income. Teachers, firefighters, people with pensions, out and about doing stuff because they know that check shows up every month. People that are not enjoying their retirement are people that have lots of money that go, where do I get the money from this month? What's the return on this doing? How long is this going to last? So just something to think about. All right, now let's talk about the most fun part of the day. Death. The death issues. All right. So, when it comes to estate planning and it's time for us to go, and we're not going to be here anymore, we all have ideas about who we want to get our stuff, when they should get it, how they should get it, whether it's just give it to them all at once or give them income over years or hold payments for certain periods of time. So those are all variables. Those all change. But the one thing I can promise you we all agree on is that we're all trying to avoid this guy. Does that sound about right? So since we're all trying to avoid that, What is probate? Can anyone tell me what it is?
When it go to court and the judge decides, am I close?
You're very, very close. It's when I go to court and the judge decides what's going to happen with my stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's a form of private taxation. And I use that term because you choose to go through probate. By the way you set up your estate, by the things that you do ahead of time, you are electing to go through this process. There's two ways you get into a probate. The first one, the easiest one, is the kids find your will, or you don't have a will. And the kids pick up the phone and they call an attorney. And they say, Mom and Dad are gone, what do we do? And he says, I'll be right there. We're going to open up a probate. And you know that because if you've ever purchased a will in your life, a standard last testament will, you know that his business card and his number is all over that document in multiple places because he wants you to call him. He needs you to call him because that's where he gets paid. He gave you that will for $300, $400, $500, $600. But now that you're gone, he's going to probate your estate, and that's where he's going to get paid. I'll come back to that in a second. That's step one. Step two is I try and sell something I don't own. So I'll use my parents for an example. I'm one of 5 kids, and my parents live in North Carolina. And at the end of the day, they say, take this house, sell it, and give 20% to each of you 5. Call it a day. So they pass away. We put the house up for sale. We hire a real estate agent. Someone agrees on a price. We get all the way down to the date where we're going to sign off on the deed. And they pull out the deed to Mom and Dad's house. And whose name is on the deed for Mom and Dad's house? Mom and Dad. And where are Mom and Dad?
Yeah.
So who's going to sign off on that deed? Nobody. I don't have the right to sell that house while they're alive. I certainly don't have the right to sell that house when they're dead. Anything that takes their signature to sell, I will not have access to unless I go through probate. And I get a letter from the courts that says we've satisfied a probate on this. We know that the house is free and clear. We know all liens and levies have been settled. There's no judgments about this estate, and this money is now free to go. But that process takes a long time. So just so you guys know, that's the probate process.
Oh.
Ah, that's what it looks like.
Oh my God.
And when I used to get home from school back in high school, my mom would love to watch Rockford Files and Barnaby Jones. And the very first step is, just like those TV shows, let's read the will and let's see who's getting what. See, probate is a form of private taxation because it's expensive. All right? Inside of here, there's accountants, assessors, there's the courts, there's letters to creditors, there's time. So probate, on average, is somewhere between, on the low end, maybe 3 or 4%, and on the high end, maybe 8, 9%, something like that. So let's just use 6% as an average. 6% probate cost, and it's going to take, say, 18 months to get this through. And my estate is worth $1 million when I add up my house, my investments, my IRAs, brokerage accounts, things like that, my life insurance that I had on me, my second home. So $1 million times 6% is $60,000. That's where these guys get paid. The probate itself, that business every year, that's a really bad example right there. $50 billion goes through the probate process every year. They give you that $300 or $400 will because, make no mistake, they want you here. That's where your attorney gets paid. It's an annuity for him. When law firms are bought and sold, they do check drawers of wills. How many drawers of wills does this firm have? Why? Because that's future business. And when you bought that will, you said to the attorney, I do not want to go through probate, because I've had this conversation with folks before. And the attorney has guaranteed me I won't go through probate. Is he correct?
No.
Is he correct?
No.
Yes, he is. Where will you be?
Yeah.
You won't go through probate, but your estate will. You're not. There's no probate between husband and wife. You just brought up, we talked about powers of attorney. Something happens to the husband, the wife gets everything in the estate, community property. Something happens to the wife, husband typically gets everything. There's no probate. But once the second spouse is gone, boom, that's when probate starts. And then the kids are in charge of running you through here, and they've got to go through all the legal steps, and they hire an attorney. And God forbid you own property in more than one state. Because I live here, but I've got my summer home in northern Minnesota. Your Arizona attorney most likely is not licensed in Minnesota. So you may have to find a Minnesota attorney to probate that asset up there. This is what everyone's trying to avoid. They're all thinking, I've got to find a way to get around this guy right here. Okay? So let's talk about a few ways to get around it. The number one way to avoid probate is to be broke. And I say that facetiously, but a lot of folks tell me, I'm going to spend that last dollar on that last day. I got it planned. I know when I'm going. Most of us don't know when we're going. And now that I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, I understand my parents' predicament of, I gave them $20 to go get lunch, and all of a sudden lunch cost all that $20. I didn't get my money back. So I know you guys who have kids out there have given money to them that you've never seen again. And so if you decided to take this route and say, I'm going to gift money to the kids as a way to get around stuff, just be careful, because if you ever need that money back, history tells me they may not have it. Okay? So be very careful about being broke. How about, does anyone know what this is? Cool. We know what that is. That's typically how most folks have their assets titled in Arizona. Joint tenants with rights to survivorship, or because we're a community property state, they may have it as community property. In a joint tenant situation, I've got a house, and mom and dad are on that house as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. And dad passes away. Does mom get the house? Sure she does. And I'm going to pick on the ladies for a second because this is typically what happens. I won't say typically, but this does happen. So dad passed away and mom got the house, and she got the house because he was on the deed with, or she was on the deed with dad. And then she says, I'm going to get in joint tenants with my son. And when I go, my son gets my house because he's on the deed. Is that true? For the most part, that's true. For the most part, it's true. Sure. If mom goes ahead and puts son on the deed and mom dies, that is son's house. What he loses is he loses the step-up value that you typically get on real estate at it, that when the parents pass away, you get a new value to that house. It's today's value. So he would lose that. But here's other things that can happen. I know personally of some of these have happened because we've had clients come to us. Mom's on the deed with son, and then son's 18-year-old son, so grandson, gets in a car wreck. And somebody wants to sue, not the 18-year-old because he has no money. So they're going to sue the 18-year-old's mom and dad, which is this guy right here. Yeah. So now grandma's house is in grandson's lawsuit. Okay. Or mom is on the house with the son, and then the son and the wife, so her daughter-in-law, decide to get a divorce. And mom never liked her anyways. But now he's in court fighting with her over assets. Guess what else is in court? Half of mom's house is in court now because he's half owner of that. So it does and it can work, but it can also be a disaster. All right. So just be careful about joint tenancy. So the most common thing that people do, you see them all the time in all these seminars, is they do what's called a living trust. A living, revocable living trust. So inside of a revocable living trust, first of all, it's living. It means it goes on living even after you're gone. It's revocable. I can change it. I can amend it. I can do whatever I want with it. It's my stuff. You can change your trust anytime you guys want, right? And you can change yours as well. And it's held in trust for me. It's a lot like a corporation. The easiest way for me to explain it is, everybody knows Microsoft, correct? Yeah. Everyone kind of knows who Bill Gates is, founder of Microsoft. I don't know if he's still in the day-to-day operations of it. But if he is, and Bill Gates was to die today, is Microsoft dead because he died?
No.
No. Board of directors gets together and they find a new Bill Gates and they go, you're our person. And that person signs off on the assets of Microsoft as Bill Gates did. Microsoft doesn't die. Same thing with your family trust. I put all of my assets into my trust, and the fact that I died doesn't trigger a probate because my assets are held in a trust. And when I'm gone, we just name a new successor trustee to manage our affairs. And then that person has the power to sign, which was the same power we had when we created it. Does that make sense? So back to my example about mom and dad, when they had a house and it was owned by mom and dad, and I wanted to sell that house, and I couldn't because I wasn't on the title. Well, one of the things you'll do in a trust is you'll change the title of that house. And you'll say that house is now owned, my last name is Meyer. So they'll say, it's owned by the Meyer Trust. And so they simply, this is an example of a trust right here. They pick up the trust, they go in there and they say, yep, the Meyer Trust is in full effect. This house on the deed, it says it's owned by this trust. And it says that the original trustees are mom and dad. And I give them a couple of death certificates and I go, boom, mom and dad are gone. And inside the document it says, okay, the successor trustee, ironically, is not me, it's actually my brother. The successor trustee is my brother, and he provides ID and says, yep, I'm that guy right here. And they go, wonderful, sign off on the deed. House is gone. No probate. That's what this is all about. That's why people are going this route. So there's a couple people in there that are important. The first person is the grantor or the trustor, the person who's putting their stuff in the trust. If it's mom and dad's trust, it's all of mom and dad's stuff. It's their houses, it's their cars, their bank accounts, all of that stuff goes in there. And then because it's their stuff, they have to name somebody who's going to be the trustee. Well, if this is mom and dad, who do you think wants to manage mom and dad's stuff while mom and dad are alive? Mom and dad. So mom and dad are here. And if something happens to one of them, the other one's got full control. And then when they're gone, there is somebody called a successor trustee. And there's other people called beneficiaries. Sorry for the writing, it's a little low. The successor trustee is somebody that they say, when mom and dad are no longer here, the successor trustee then takes over for me. And the successor's sole job is to take those assets and get them to the beneficiaries in the way we've laid it out. And that's important, the way we've laid it out, not how they want to do it. They can't change this thing. Because once mom and dad are gone, guess what? This is no longer a revocable trust. It's irrevocable. Because the people that put it together aren't here to make changes, so nobody can change it. So they're in charge of making sure these assets get to these people. Okay? You had brought up a great comment a couple of minutes ago about the success, about the federal estate tax exemption at I think it was $600,000. Well, back in the day when they created these trusts, there are several different types of trusts. There's Q-tips and dynasties and disclaimers and simple probate avoidance and ABs and As and AAs. There's a bunch of different trusts out there. And when this was out there, a lot of attorneys, or a lot of clients, I should say, got what was called an AB trust. Which, to your point, when one of us died, the trust got split into two trusts, an A and a B, to take care of the taxes. Well, just because tax law has changed doesn't mean your trust changed. So we do have some folks that come into our office and go, I still have an AB trust. I don't want to have to divide this and live on half of the assets. So just like we talked about those power of attorneys, reviewing those, find out what type of trust you have to make sure that you understand how it's going to function when you're gone. Okay? So it's important to understand what type of trust you have out there. Okay? So we sit down with a lot of clients and we ask one simple question. If you were to look back on your estate plan and your distribution of your assets 10 years after you were gone, what should have or must have happened for you to say that was smart? And I tell people, you can do that. You can control that right now. So just getting a trust together and saying, I got 3 kids, a third, have a nice day. Oh, no, no, no. How about a third, and I'll give you some of it now, and I'll structure some of it for income, or I'll let it lump sum grow until you're 65, or we'll pay for stuff, or I want it to pay off your bills. So instead of you just getting this money, the trustee is going to ask you for your bills. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pay those off with my money. I think that's a good use of my money. I just don't want you to get further in debt. If you have a child or a beneficiary who may be addicted to something, you know that giving them money is a bad idea. So simply dying doesn't mean you should give it to them. It should be set up in a way that it benefits, it enhances their lives. Depending on your estate value, we got kids that they could retire with mom and dad give them all the money right now. And when we tell them that, mom and dad go, yeah, that's not what I want. So how do you want to give them this money? Do you just want to give it to them right now? And so you all have a goal or a vision of how you want to give the money to the kids. You've got one kid that's, I know he's going to take it and invest it right away, and he doesn't need the money. And this one over here, oh, I'm going to blow that tomorrow. And this wife over here, this son of mine, oh my God, I can only imagine what they're going to do with it. This is a tremendous gift, you giving them your assets that you've worked your whole life for. Make sure they use that money accordingly. And so that's just a really long answer to your question about how long a trust lasts. Because you can set up stipulations to say, hey kids, I'm going to do something for my grandchildren. Okay, you can do that. The stuff that goes in a trust is called funding, where you actually change the way the asset is titled. It's anything with a deed, a title, or a registration. A deed on real estate, a title on bank accounts, registrations on boats, planes, things that, if you think about it right now, all the stuff that takes your signature to sell would go into your trust. I don't need to put my coffee table in there or my refrigerator, but I do have to put my house. I don't have to put my clothing or my jewelry that gets covered by the will that's inside of the trust, but I do need to put down my brokerage account, and I do need to put down all that stuff. The stuff that does not go in your trust, 401ks, IRAs, or insurance. And why not? Can you tell me why? Put a big X through it. You don't put those inside of your trust. Perfect. You've already got a beneficiary designation. Beneficiary designations supersede whatever your trust says. You want to work with advisors that kind of understand the whole picture and how you just want to have a plan for everything. I don't need to buy a long-term care policy. I got to have a long-term care plan. I may not need a revocable trust. I just have to have what's my backup plan? How do I get rid of this stuff? So let's do this, guys. It's 12:30. I really appreciate you guys working with us as we came in. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you coming in.